Welcome to another episode of Victoria's Lounge from the Radisson Blu Hotel. Now, it would seem in the midst of the recent industrial actions, the high cost of living, drought, unemployment, there's a lot going on that Kenyans have to deal with. So how real is the struggle? And how can we remedy the situation as citizens rather than waiting for institutions to come to our rescue? We'll have a panel and audience who are ready to delve into this conversation. Let's meet them now.
Wanjiri Nderu is a volunteer social justice crusader based in Nairobi who focuses on governance and getting justice for victims of child sexual abuse, with a bias toward the sexual abuse of boys. She is the recipient of the 2016 Integrity Champion in Kenya award by Transparency International. Renee Ngamau is a lawyer with a focus in financial and banking law, having worked in some of the top law firms in Kenya and England. She is the vivacious co-host of the popular Capital in the Morning show on Capital FM and has some great insights on leaders and the citizenry's responsibility to keep them accountable. Victor Mulindi is an advocate of the High Court and managing partner of his own firm. Victor is passionate about governance and development issues. Stay tuned to hear his take on what is ailing corporates and business people in the current economy.
Remember, hashtag Victoria's Lounge is how you can chime into the conversation on social media. We always love to hear from you. I have been waiting to have this conversation. There's a lot happening in Kenya. I would know because I'm in the news. But from industrial action, the doctor strike, the lecturer strike, the drought, to high cost of living, unemployment, which really has been with us for time immemorial. I like to say that of all God's creation, the most resilient is the Kenyan citizen, because we go through a lot and we don't pipe up enough. I don't know, Renee, from what you have observed, what is the state of affairs of where we are now?
I think that depends on who you ask, Victoria. Okay. If you look at the economic indices, if they are anything to go by, we've got more than 5% growth, economic growth in this country, and therefore we should be richer. Should being the operative word here, because the sense on the ground is that we're not. That in fact our pockets are dwindling and that more money is leaving our pockets faster than it should be. And I think part of the resilience that you talk about is just the conservation of energy so that we can get on with what we need to and attempt to create the kind of lives that we want to. On the other hand, we've seen huge projects in this country. We've seen the SGR come up. We've seen Two Rivers Mall. We've just seen the signing of a 10 billion shilling facility at the Kenyatta University that is set to be put up. What are these investors seeing that we're not yet feeling? So like I said, it is dependent on who it is that you ask what the state of the economy is.
Right, because on paper, you're right, it looks good.
It does.
We're growing. World Bank is saying we are hitting all our targets, but we're not feeling it like you're saying. Why doesn't it translate? And Victor, I'll ask you, to the Wananchi.
Yes, I agree with what Renee is saying, that there are many things that are happening in a positive way. If you look at the high-profile figures that just came to this country last year, starting from the former President of the United States of America, to the Pope, to musical artists that have made it in the world over, they actually came to Kenya. Talk about Mark Zuckerberg, talk about Bill Gates. They were all here last year. What were they seeing that the common Wananchi is not seeing? And I think it's a question of mindset. It's a question of mindset. It's a question of, does the Kenyan understand what they have as Kenyans? Do they understand the dream that they have as Kenyans? Do they understand the potential that is in this country? And government should play a very major role in terms of changing the mindset of Kenyans to make them think about how they can make a living for themselves, as opposed to making them Wananchi think that the government is going to deliver this. And how will government be able to help the trickle-down effect? So that, yes, we are seeing all these projects going on, but is it trickling down to the Mwananchi back at the village? That's the question that we need to ask ourselves. That's the question that government needs to answer and deliver.
You mentioned something that government should help in changing mindset, and I really wonder if government is the right player to do that, because people have become so disillusioned by government because of some things that have happened, corruption being the biggest factor. Wanjeri, you talk a lot about graft on social media, and you encounter a lot of cases where people have been and fallen victim to corruption cases. But I mean, talk about that. Government, do you feel, could they do that?
You know, as much as we are seen to be developing, and I'm using the quotes very deliberately, malls coming up, all these things being signed worth billions of shillings, are really not a reflection that we are growing as a nation. The people who are suffering are not the people who are going to these malls. It is the people down there. And what is making those people suffer? It's corruption. So we need to stop creating this nice look about Kenya, which is a very beautiful country. It is. But the majority of the people down there are not feeling this beauty. The only people who are gaining or having access to this beautiful Kenya are the people who are stealing our money. And that is the fact of the matter. The bottom line is corruption is the problem we have in this country. Whether you look at it from the doctor strike, to the lecturers, to all those people, the reason we cannot afford to pay our people is because these people are carrying our money in guineas.
I want to hear from our audience, just in terms of what you've observed. Has life gotten tougher, or just has life been that way?
I believe things have gotten tougher because of the leadership that has been going on. Since the coalition government in 2012-2013, you could see that since the government that took over, there was more of increase in debt per capita among citizens. The value of the shilling has plummeted to an all-time high in 2015. Right now it is low, but still it makes things more expensive. And also also what Wanjeri is saying, whereby there is the whole thing of trying to clean up the money and the economy data that is normally flashed out by government means that it really is benefiting the chosen few rather than the few who have chosen. So that's what I think is going to make Kenyans such angry. And in the case whereby Kenyans are not being angry enough, it's that in the case of whereby a person who steals money using a gunny bag, once you go to complain, you'll end up in a gunny bag like Willie Kimani. So in this case, there is a problem.
Let me get Renee's take on this, because we always will be quick to blame corruption. We'll be quick to blame corrupt leaders. Is that always the reason why we are suffering?
I take the view that it's not. And I think that there is an extent to which, and not to downplay corruption at all. Please do understand that I share the sentiments in this room, and probably even amongst those who are watching us today, that corruption has played a huge part in the way in which our country has developed or has not developed as fast as it possibly could. However, I think that sometimes we give corruption a name that is bigger than its own. Two things. Number one, our leaders or the people who are in power cannot do that which we cannot acquiesce to. To that extent, and to the extent to which we have got what we view to be a corrupt leadership, we've got to ask the question, not by way of taking blame, but taking responsibility. Where are we in all of this? And what is it that has enabled a certain section of our society to manifest a value that we all seem to hold? Corruption is no longer the purvey of or the privilege of the public sector, which incidentally it was in the 90s and the 80s. You would never go to a private corporation and expect to pay for something in order for you to get a job. Today, there are allegations that it's different. Then there's the second question, which is the question that you've posed, and I think that the other two panelists have spoken to very well, which is the effect of this growth. Now, who do we, or not rather we, who is viewed as a middle class in Africa? There are already statistics around this. The Economic Intelligence Unit holds that Africans who are earning between $10 to about $30 a day are viewed as the middle class. But just translate that into Kenya shillings. If you earn between 1,000 and 3,000 shillings a day, do you consider yourself a middle class? No. Why? Because of the cost of living, for example, in Nairobi. And there's a whole new argument about one of the indices of growth in a country, particularly economic growth in a country, being how is it trickling down? So that we're no longer just talking about GDP or the gross national produce, but also we're talking about the inclusive development index, which means how many people are benefiting from this. The numbers again are out. In the last 10 years, there's only been an increase in inclusivity of 2.2% in a country of 42 million odd people. The question perhaps is not necessarily, is it only corruption? But it's also, what are the barriers to inclusivity that are showing that we are growing, but that growth is only at a certain level and is not trickling down? And how can we include everyone in the economy so that we all benefit, not some to the exclusion of the majority?
A great point to leave it on. Inclusive growth, something to think about during the break, and give some ideas on hashtag Victoria's Lounge. We want to hear from you. Let's take a short break. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. And Renee, you really raised an important point of the inclusive growth. And I'm wondering how much of a role can regular Kenyans play in that? Because we can think it has to be institutions to actually make a conducive environment for that. But we actually have a role. And there was a question here, and I'll come for your response. Go ahead.
One of the paradoxes is that the middle class are the most well-educated, well-learned, but unfortunately the engagement on the national issues is at a low level. And this is a worrying trend in this country. Because if we have 10 millionaires who are controlling 10 million beggars, then the disparity will definitely be feasible. Our concern is, what can we do as a middle class so that we engage more on serious issues that are affecting this country? We will say that it doesn't affect me personally, but with time, it will catch up you. They will eat others, but in the next 2 years, 5 years, you will be the person who will be roasted. So the middle class, I think they have a vital role to play in this country. We should not let the 10 millionaires control the 10 million beggars.
You know, I wonder, because again, in Wanjiri, you said you don't believe in that middle class term, which maybe we should probably reterm it to the able, or those who have, because there is a certain class of people who they have enough disposable cash. They can do a lot with the money that they have. And that's probably who we need to start speaking to, perhaps, and not label the middle class, because it's almost like a word that's just floating around that we like to just pick at, but that doesn't really hold much meaning, especially here in Kenya.
We tend to blame the quote-unquote middle class for most of the political problems that we have in this country. It is understandable, yes, but also we need to shift blame where it belongs, in leadership. Now, the middle class, to me in this country, it's a mindset. It is not an actual reality. It's a condition of, it's a state of mind where you have convinced yourself, I am now middle class, for the majority of the so-called middle class. They're busy chasing about paying loans, trying to keep up with this lifestyle that they really, really need to keep up with. They have to, because they are using or employing private solutions to public problems. Like now, for instance, your child has to go to a private school. So you have to chase that money to get that child. So if you tell this middle class person to wake up and rise and say no, or hold their leaders accountable, they never have the time to, because they are so busy trying not to get auctioned. They're so busy trying to keep this lifestyle in their mind that, you know, we are better than, this is what I call the at least disease. They suffer from the at least disease. At least I don't go to Kenyatta Hospital. So, you know, so I pay for private medical care. That private medical care that you're paying for, at 100, on average, if you have a family of a father, mother, 2 kids, you're paying 150,000 a year for that, instead of demanding that Kenyatta National Hospital should be working properly for you to go there as. So in fact, we should even get to a point where leadership in this country is forced to use some of these facilities. So I, quote-unquote middle class, will spend so much of my time not worrying or getting concerned about what the other person, the Mama Mboga in Kibera or Kayole or wherever, is how they're surviving, as long as I have this illusion that I am safe. But look at who has been suffering during these times of the retrenchments and everything. It's not the mama mboga who's being retrenched. She's still pangaing her nyanyas and things, right? But that person who was middle class earning that 40K has been told, your job is now. You had taken a loan of 15,000 to buy that Toyota for 300K, so that you are in this middle class. We need to have this reality check as Kenyans. Does the middle class exist? Yes. How big is it? Very small. The majority are struggling people who wake up every single day to go and figure out how to keep this illusion that everything is fine.
Right. And you mentioned a very important word, illusion, because a lot of that wealth is based on debt.
Yes.
You know, you're buying your car on debt, your house on debt. And speaking of auctioneering, because I know you deal a lot with that, Victor, let me just run off some statistics here. In a Daily Nation article last December, it said Association of Auctioneers says the rate at which Kenyans are getting auctioned has more than doubled in the last 12 months. So that was in the year of 2016. The hardest hit are the middle income earners, middle class, with a taste for classy and posh lifestyle. So you're trying to chase this lifestyle that you can't afford. But as long as you can get a loan from the bank, then you can live whatever lifestyle that you want. And you see that a lot of small businesses as well, which are struggling.
Yes, sadly, it's the small and micro enterprises which have been suffering because of this lack of money, so to speak. Some are very well-intentioned when they go out to ask for these loans, because if you want to start a business in Kenya, you need capital. You need to maybe rent an office. You need to buy furniture for your office. You need to put yourself up at a certain level so that you can get the clientele that you want to. And so sometimes you don't get the clientele that you're meant to, and then just business goes under. What do? The bank wants its money and they come for you. So most of these people that have been auctioned are actually small and micro enterprises that are trying to make it in this city, and they have just hit a wall. They've hit a brick wall, and I think then we need to look at the question of entrepreneurship again. What is entrepreneurship? Just because I'm a lawyer, does it mean that I can run a successful business as a lawyer? Just because I'm a cook, does it mean that I can run a good restaurant? I can open a restaurant today and become successful. Does it mean that that I'm a good hotelier? I can open a hotel and run it and it becomes successful? No, that is not the case. I think entrepreneurship is much more than that. It's much more than just understanding that I can go into this business and do it. We've seen it all over the place that if he opens a business for M-Pesa, I will copy him and open a business for M-Pesa. I haven't even understood why he's opening an M-Pesa. I haven't even understood why she's doing a salon. I haven't even understood why he's doing a barber shop. But because I want to get into business, I go and borrow money and say, by the way, barber shops, by the way, ziko na pesa, let me open mine. So I think it just goes to more than just Kenyans actually, they're looking for money.
Yeah, they're very
Kenyans are very
yeah.
enterprising, they're very hardworking, and that's why they're feared in these neighboring countries. If you ask Kenyans who've been there, they're feared because they're hardworking, they're go-getters. But it's just one or two things that are not working out, and I think we need to revisit and find out where the problem is. We really need to find out where the issue is. And again, it's a question of disillusion. And it's a question of what she was saying, wanting that lavish lifestyle. Why are you in business? Are you in business to give solutions to problems? Are you in business to make money? Are you in business to, live a large life? And I think if you get into business to solve people's problems, then you're in the right place. But if you get into business to make money, then there's a bit of issue that comes into place.
Some questions in the audience? Yes, go ahead.
The issue of illusion as the middle class is quite true. Because when we were down there doing research for the housing, the kind of housing Kenyans want, you find that someone tells you that I want a new house. So now the question is, who are you leaving the old house for? Yet it's still a house which you can live in. But because you want a new one, you'll pay higher for that one, for that house. So by the end of the day, you find that you earn 30,000, you earn 40,000, but by the end of the day, you are paying 10,000 for your house, which is like a third of your income. Then after paying 10,000 for your housing, you pay another loan for your car. So now you find that by the end of the day, you are just like living a lie. You are not living yourself, because if I earn 30,000, I ought to live at a 5,000 shillings a house. But if I earn 100,000, I ought to live at a 10,000 house. So by the end of the day, you are lying to your mind. You are saying that, well, I'm comfortable and I don't care what happens to Kenya. Now, coming to growth and economic development in the country, you find that statistics will show, as a country, we are growing. But the question is, where is this money going to? It's going to a certain class of people. And by the end of the day, I'm down there, I'm an employee, I receive nothing. The person who employs me never adds a salary on top of what I earn. So he gets money, and for him to get that tender, he has to pay another person. So what are we working for? The statistics will say we have 2 rivers, we have XYZ mall, we have another mall, we have another mall. But me, as a Kenyan who is down there, I'm no longer a middle class. I am that class which is below the middle class. So you find that the person who gets the money has a lot of money at his disposal for spending, but the person who is doing the actual job has nothing to spend. So we are lying to ourselves.
I see a lot of hands up in the audience. We have to go to break really quickly, and we'll just talk about also the remedies to that and what Renee had mentioned, inclusive growth. What can we do? We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. You're watching Victoria's Lounge. Victor, you had a comment to make to one of the audience members.
And again, it's a question of mindset. What defines success in Kenya today? Just think about it. If I want to show myself successful, I'll have to buy a car. And it's really very skewed. And if you compare with countries that are doing really well in the European countries, the Scandinavian countries, for example, in Europe, people don't have an urge to buy cars all the time. They just want to, if they want to travel if they want to commute to work, they use bicycles, you know. And I think that's what we need to embrace as Kenyans. We need to embrace a saving culture. That's number one. We need to embrace a culture that doesn't put pressure on us to look successful. You know, you've come to Nairobi, guys back at home are calling you to send money, and because they know you have the money, because you're in Nairobi, in the city, in the big city, you know, and there's that pressure to look successful, to have a car, to live in a big house. If you're living in a rented place, you want to be in the best neighborhood, you know, and then. But the question is, are you earning that kind of money to be able to sustain that kind of lifestyle? And I think that is the quagmire that the middle class, so-called middle class, finds itself in today.
I mean, Renee, do you find that is the case? It's a mindset issue that could be our downfall or undoing.
I love what Victor said and the intervention from the gentleman on where we want to be. You know, that if you're over here, you want to be over there, and if you're over there. I will be very controversial and say there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. That is the whole point of aspiration. This is the whole point of living, that you will get yourself from where you are to a better place, to a bigger place, to a much more comfortable place that you will be able to meet your expectation. But I take the view that Victor has, which is the how. So if you've moved from, you know, wherever it is that you've moved from, you're now in the big city, and in the morning you want to drive a car. Let's have the conversation about how you will get to the place where you drive the car. I actually take the view that wanting bigger is not a problem. Wanting not to work for it, wanting to get it by way of a shortcut, wanting not to create wealth but to be rich, and there is a huge difference between the two. Creating wealth means that as I sit here or go to sleep tonight, my money is continuing to work for me. How? Because I've created the residual income, because I am manufacturing goods or providing services or doing something that is able to continue, not just to generate money for me, but to generate wealth for those who are dependent on me. Look at the numbers of people who are dependent on one earner in this country. Some numbers have said 10. You have 10 dependents to every major earner. There is absolutely no way under the sun that 10% of a population can carry another 90%. Yet if you look at the taxes, is that not what is happening? At some point we will have to agree this, that if I am going to move from walking on my feet to riding a bicycle to going on the boda to driving X car to driving the luxury car, I'm going to have to build it, not to earn it overnight. And in fact, I think that a major source of corruption, because we blame corruption and do not ask what brings about corruption. Corruption is not in and of itself a natural phenomenon. It's not like a weed. It doesn't like grow naturally. It grows as a result of a value that Victor has spoken about. In the morning, I want to be driving a luxury vehicle. How are you going to do that unless you're a entrepreneur and you overbill by 10% so that you pay the guy that you talked about, who pays the guy that he talked about, you don't pay your employee, then you can drive the car.
Right.
And that's where we take responsibility, or we must take responsibility as Kenyans. It's very easy for us to sit back and go, government has, and people are carrying gunny bags of money out of banking halls, but what are we contributing to it? If you go to a church today, especially up country, and the local Mheshimiwa, who you know how he got that money, who you know, at least, well, I haven't been to many in Nairobi yet, but I can tell you about the ones where I come from. You'll be told, those who are in front, you know yourselves, you can see that Mheshimiwa this and that has come in. Please move to the back now so that we can give him a place of respect. Hold on, before the election, he was a boda guy or a matatu driver. Now, now, 2 years after he is sitting as an MCA, he owns 15 plots. Your school playground has been taken away. Your CBA with the doctors, because that is at county level, has not been negotiated, and everyone's waiting for national government to do what county government should be doing, and then you give him a place of respect in the front. What value are we saying about ourselves? We don't care how you got the money. We simply care that you do. So for everyone else who has not sat at the front, what is the message we're telling you? Quickly go steal something, so you too can sit, at least if not at the front, on the second row, and not outside next to the speaker. So perhaps we should interrogate not corruption, but the values that we as Kenyans hold. And maybe next time you're asked to stand up and go to the back, it's hail to the no. Get him to sit at the back until he earns the respect by creating the wealth that brings him or her to the front.
If we had that many citizens to stand up and speak up like that, we'd probably see a very different political landscape. But you know, Renee, you mentioned something which was, aspiration is good. It's great. And there's a lot of people aspiring in Mashinani, aspiring in the slums. And then they'll tell you, I would love to drive a car. I would love to live in a 2-bedroom, but I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to get there. If I can't get a job, if I'm not educated enough, all I've known is poverty because my grandmother is still here and I am too, and so are my kids. And that's majority of Kenyans. So how do we start, as much as it seems like an impossible problem, to empower those individuals? Because again, those are the ones who are going to be taken for a ride by the Mheshimiwa.
We have a duty, nay, a responsibility as the educated middle class or working class, or as the educated Kenyans that we are, that I think you spoke about. And that responsibility is this: there's a reason we were able to be educated to this point, so that we could be able to go and get the employee that you're talking about and create a progression for them. Because there are doors that will open to this panel that will not open to other people by virtue of our education, by virtue of our self-confidence, by virtue of our track record. Yeah. But it takes work for us to open those doors. Work on ourselves, work on our business, work on demanding for certain public services. If we don't do that as professionals, lawyers, doctors, teachers, architects, business people, we are the ones currently failing this country by playing safe at a time when we desperately need for people to take on a little bit more risk and be a little bit more demanding.
So glad you said that. Wanjeri, you're one of those individuals who left corporate and said, I'm going to get my hands dirty. And that's the work really that you've been doing. I mean, just take us through some of the things that you entail out there.
My focus usually is getting people to demand accountability of their leaders, because we have to do that. Mm-hmm. As much as in our own individual capacities we are going to get a mind at a time to change their mindset, how are we collectively getting our leaders to do what they're supposed to do? Now, there's always this line where we are told that the leaders are corrupt because we are corrupt. Personally, I don't agree with that. Mm-hmm. I don't agree in shifting blame that because I'm corrupt as a leader, it is you who elected me who is corrupt. But on the other hand, we must, as people, be able to rise and say enough is enough. It has gotten to a point in this nation, we are going more downhill than we are seeing this quote-unquote growth. If you go to the Mashinani proper, Nairobi Mashinani, the slums and everything, I go in there a lot. And you find somebody has walked from Kibera all the way to industrial area to look for this day jobs. Mm. They pay 300 bob. 300 bob, you come back in the evening. It's supposed to buy unga. Unga is now at between 115 to 130 bob to feed your kids. From that 300, you're supposed to have money for the charcoal or for the mafuta ya taa. You're supposed to have cabbage or skuma or whatever. How is this family surviving? How is this family surviving? They're literally not. So it's not trickling down to them. So for me, still corruption becomes the underlying base as to why we have all these problems.
And that's something that we're not denying. I think we have to also acknowledge that there are other factors also contributing to a lot of the hardships that Kenyans are facing. I'll take two more comments before we wrap up. Time is really, really not on our side. Go ahead.
My take would be that as a country, we need to reevaluate our value system, because we are the people who suffer at the end of the day. Look at the employment statistics right now among the young people. More than 1 million graduates are being vomited into the labor market, and yet only 50,000 are being able to be absorbed into the mainstream formal employment. Our informal sector is absorbing more than 80% of our current labor force, and yet if you look at the government, it is doing very minimal to support the informal sector. Another problem that we have, impunity, because my take would be corruption is there even in the corporate world and in the other sectors, but the most biggest challenge in the government is impunity, because right now, even if you come from the side of the president, you might not be benefiting simply because you are from his tribe. Mm-hmm. But so long as you have some mutual benefit in terms of business and all that, you end up actually benefiting more. So as a country, we need to get out of our comfort zones. And as elections are coming near right now, we need to be able to stand up and make sure that our vote is counted as a country.
Okay, great. Another comment there, and then we'll wrap up. Go ahead.
Specifically, I'm speaking about, or to the youth. Most of the time as a youth, we will go to primary school, to high school, and then to university, and we will sit there waiting for a job to come by. We will tarmac. Personally, I did it. And I want to address the youth and say, you really don't have to sit there and wait for employment to ever come. You can create the employment yourself. Before I opened my company, one time I was working in Westlands, Oliver, looking for a job, and I was going through the agents, and one time I asked myself, Kelly, why are you looking for a job to work for somebody when you are qualified to work for yourself? And that was my turning point, and I decided to come up with my own. The first 2-3 months, I expected to have a lot of returns, which is very normal for anybody who's starting business. But you realize the first 2-3 months is when you don't make anything. You know, you have to create a market, you have to create networks. So for the youths of Kenya today, I want to encourage everybody, when you're starting up a business out there, we really don't have to sit and blame everything. Yes, there's corruption. Yes, there's tribalism. Yes, but we have to have a solution. At the end of the day, your kids need to go to school. At the end of the day, you have to be treated. So life has to move on. So how do life move on? Be persistent. Stay there. If there's no job that is coming, wait for another day tomorrow. And eventually, we're going to make it slowly by slowly. Thank you.
Wonderful advice, and we have to leave it there. Thank you so much to my panelists, to the audience as well. This conversation, I know, is going to continue after the cameras go off, so we don't have to end just when the red lights go off. And of course, on social media, Victoria's Lounge, keep it going. We need to hear more solutions in terms of creating that inclusive growth that Renee talked about. And then what can you do? Wanjeri actually took a step and left corporate and decided, let me help out those I see who are walking down the street or those I see walking into my office building. And that's what I'm challenging you to do this coming week. An act of kindness for someone who may not necessarily be a stranger, but someone that you come in contact with on a regular basis. Maybe the askari outside your house help, maybe the teacher of your child, or any individual, a coworker, a family member, someone close who can actually do something good for. And please share your act of kindness with us, hashtag Victoria's Lounge. We'd love to see it on all of our platforms, and then we'll share it on social media and just see what that does for your mood this coming week. I'd love to see what you have done for someone, and you be the difference and the change that you want to see. Thanks for watching Victoria's Lounge. Thank you to the Radisson Blu Hotel for hosting us. Let's do this again next week. Have a wonderful evening.
Social justice activists. A lot of the noise I make is online.
Good. Thanks, Becky. Thanks so much, Renee. It's no worries. Yeah.
Women's Day, so I think that would be
Okay. Yeah, do let me know, please.
Cool. All right.
Thanks.
Running away from tear gas once in a while.
Tis a wrap. Thank you. Oh yeah, absolutely. We can start with the lady, yes, with the beautiful red hair. Water. Ah, I know. Thanks for coming. Yeah,